I overheard my boyfriend telling his mom, "I just don't have enough to buy the kind of ring she deserves," so I decided it was time to show him how much I'm actually worth. There are moments in life when your entire world shatters, not with a bang, but with the quiet, suffocating sound of a phone conversation you were never meant to hear. I thought I knew the man I loved. I thought I knew my own worth. Then, one quiet night, a whispered truth cracked open my life and showed me everything I thought I knew was a lie. Tristan and I had been together for 3 years. He was sweet, thoughtful, and, importantly, came from what they call old money, the kind his family guarded like dragons hoarding their gold. Me? I came from absolutely nothing. Scholarships got me through college, side hustles paid my rent. I'd learned early on that wanting things and affording them were two entirely different universes. That night, I wasn't even supposed to be home. My hospital shift got canceled last minute, so I slipped in quietly through the back door, trying not to disturb anyone. That's when I heard him on the phone in the bedroom. His voice was strained in that particular way it always got when he was talking to his mother. "I want to marry her, Mom. I really do. But the ring Dad gave you cost $40,000. Grandfather's was $60,000. I just don't have enough to buy the ring she's worth." A cold dread seized me, twisting my gut. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about being measured, reduced to a price tag, my value apparently represented by a certain number of carats. And then his mother's voice, crackling through the phone, sharp and condescending. "Well, if you can't afford a proper ring, perhaps you should reconsider. A woman expects certain standards." I backed out of the house as quietly as I'd come in, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. I got in my car and just drove, aimlessly, for what felt like an eternity. That initial rush of hurt and disbelief slowly gave way to a simmering anger, which then, strangely, began to crystallize into something like clarity. By the time I returned home an hour later, my decision was made. I acted normal. We ordered takeout, watched a movie, but inside, a quiet revolution was taking place. The next morning, I called my boss and took a personal day. Then, with a focus I hadn't known I possessed, I scheduled a meeting with Tristan's father, Bernard, at his office downtown. Bernard, a man of impeccably tailored suits and even more impeccably controlled expressions, was visibly surprised when his assistant ushered me in. "Is everything all right with Tristan?" he asked, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Everything's fine," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands that I kept hidden under the table. "I'm here about the trust fund." His eyebrows shot up, a rare crack in his composure. "I'm sorry. My grandmother's trust fund," I clarified, a small, defiant note entering my voice. "The one I've never touched. I need to access it now." You see, what Tristan didn't know, what his entire family didn't know, is that my grandmother wasn't just anybody. She was Evelyn Chin, a tech pioneer who sold her company in 1987 for a staggering $340 million. She lived modestly, invested wisely, and when she passed, she left absolutely everything to her only grandchild, me. Her lawyers had strict instructions. I couldn't access the money until I was 28, or until I got married, whichever came first. And I was never, under any circumstances, to tell anyone about it unless it was absolutely necessary. Grandma wanted me to know my own worth before I knew my net worth. I was 3 months shy of my 28th birthday. Bernard made a call. Within the hour, my account manager, Patricia, arrived with a stack of documents. My current balance sat at $127 million, not including the property assets and stock portfolios. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," I said calmly, looking Bernard directly in the eye. "And I need your discretion. Tristan can't know about this yet." That evening, Tristan came home to find me cooking dinner, just like always. But on the counter, next to my humble spice rack, sat a small, deep blue box. "What's this?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Open it," I replied, watching his face. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a platinum ring. A flawless 3-carat diamond flanked by sapphires. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and it had cost $85,000. I don't understand," he stammered, picking it up. "You said you couldn't afford the ring I'm worth?" I said quietly, my voice surprisingly even. "So, I bought it myself. This is how much I'm worth, Tristan. The question is, are you worth keeping?" His face went from pale to beet red in an instant. You've been hiding money from me." "I wasn't hiding anything," I shot back, no longer quiet. "You never asked. You just assumed I was poor and needed saving." "How much?" he demanded, his eyes wide. I smiled, a cold, hard smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Enough that your mother's opinion about proper standards doesn't matter anymore. The next morning, I woke up to find Tristan gone. My phone was vibrating incessantly. His mother had called 47 times. When I finally answered, her voice was pure ice. "You manipulative little," careful, I interrupted, cutting her off mid-sentence. "I'm recording this." The line went dead. She hung up on me. 3 days later, Tristan showed up at my apartment. He wasn't alone. His father was with him. But Bernard wasn't there to help his son. He was there to make me an offer. "May we come in?" Bernard asked, his voice careful, almost deferential. I stepped aside, letting them into my small, worn apartment. Tristan wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept, his designer shirt wrinkled for the first time since I'd known him. Bernard sat on my second-hand couch and pulled out a folder. "I'm here in my capacity as your grandmother's executive and trustee." "I know who you are," I stated, my gaze still fixed on Tristan. "What you may not know is that Evelyn left specific instructions regarding your inheritance. Instructions I was bound to follow." He opened the folder, revealing official documents. "She wanted you to experience life without wealth, to build your own identity, to find someone who loved you for who you were, not what you had." Tristan finally looked up, his face a mask of dawning horror. "You knew the whole time?" "I've known since the day you introduced her," Bernard said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. "Your grandmother and I were close friends for 40 years. When she showed me her granddaughter's photo, I recognized the young woman my son was dating." My hands went cold. "You've been watching me." "Not watching," Bernard corrected gently. "Waiting. Evelyn's will had a specific provision. If you fell in love, and that person proposed without knowledge of your wealth, the trust would release immediately. But if anyone told you about the money, or if anyone in my family revealed your identity, the entire estate would go to charity." The room spun, the implications hitting me like a physical blow. "So, you let Tristan think I was poor?" "I let him know you for who you are," Bernard clarified, his gaze hardening as he looked at his son. "And when I heard him on that phone call with his mother, when I heard him say he couldn't afford the ring you deserved, I knew exactly what kind of man my son had become." His voice broke slightly, filled with a profound sadness. "I'm ashamed to say I didn't raise him better than that." Tristan stood up abruptly. "I don't need to listen to this." "Sit down," Bernard ordered, his voice suddenly laced with the steel that had built his financial empire. "You will hear what you've cost yourself." Tristan surprisingly sat. Bernard turned back to me, his expression softening. "Your grandmother wanted you to make the choice freely. She wanted you to know if someone loved you, or loved your potential wealth. That's why I couldn't intervene when my wife said those horrible things about standards and proper rings." "Your wife knew?" I asked, shock coloring my voice. "No, no one knew except me and Patricia. And now, because you've accessed the trust, the provisions are complete. You're free to tell anyone you want." I looked at Tristan. Really looked at him. The man I'd spent 3 years with suddenly seemed like a stranger. "Did you love me?" I asked him directly. He opened his mouth, closed it. "I thought I did. But not enough to marry me with a simple ring from a pawn shop," I finished for him. "That's not fair," he protested, agitated. "You don't understand the pressure. My mother, my family, they have expectations." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted, cutting him off. "You chose their expectations over me." Bernard pulled out another document. "There's one more thing. Evelyn left you a letter to be delivered when you access the trust." He handed me an envelope, addressed in my grandmother's elegant, familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Asterisk, "My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, you've either made it to 28 or fallen in love. Either way, I'm proud of you. I hope you've learned that your worth has nothing to do with bank accounts or family names. You're brilliant, hardworking, and kind. That's your inheritance from me that matters most. The money is just a tool. Don't let it change who you are. Don't let it make you cruel or cold. And whatever you do, don't waste it on someone who only wants you after they know you have it. Live boldly. Love fiercely. And if anyone ever makes you feel small, remember you come from women who built empires. All my love, Grandma." Asterisk, I wiped tears from my eyes. When I looked up, Bernard was smiling sadly. "She was an extraordinary woman," he said. "And she raised an extraordinary granddaughter." Tristan reached for my hand. "We can start over now that I know. We can have a real future. The kind my family expects." I pulled my hand away. "I deserve someone who wanted me when I wore scrubs and ate ramen for dinner," I said quietly, my voice firm. "You're not that person. You're being unreasonable." His mother's voice, sharp and shrill, cut through the air. I hadn't even heard her come in. "My son loves you. This is just a misunderstanding." I stood up, my posture straight and unyielding. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't recall inviting you. I have every right to protect my son from gold diggers. She advanced into my apartment, her heels clicking on the worn hardwood floors. Bernard winced. Victoria, please don't make this worse. Worse? She scoffed. This girl trapped our son. She hid her wealth to make him look bad, to manipulate him into enough, I said, my voice cutting through hers, steady and cold as steel. I'm going to say this once. I never hid anything. I lived my life. Your son met me at a coffee shop where I was working the register between classes. He pursued me. He told me he loved how real I was, how refreshing it was to meet someone who wasn't after his family's money. Exactly. Victoria crowed, triumphantly. Because you already had money. I had nothing. I corrected, my voice rising slightly. I had student loans and a shared apartment with 3 roommates. I worked 40 hours a week and still couldn't afford new shoes. That was my reality. The money in a trust fund I couldn't touch might as well have been on the moon. She opened her mouth, then closed it, momentarily silenced. I turned to Tristan. I loved you. Past tense. I loved the man who brought me soup when I was sick and couldn't afford a doctor. Who studied with me at the library because I couldn't afford coffee shops. Who told me that being with me was worth more than all the money in the world. I held up the ring box, the one he'd never actually offered me. But that man died the second he told his mother I wasn't worth a proper ring. I never said that. Tristan protested weakly. You said you didn't have enough to buy the ring I was worth, I clarified, my voice laced with the pain he'd inflicted. As if my worth could be measured in dollars. As if the problem was the ring, and not the fact that you valued your family's opinion more than your love for me. Bernard stood. Victoria, Tristan, it's time to go. We're not finished here. Victoria declared. Yes, you are, I said firmly, meeting her glare head-on. And I want you all to understand something clearly. I'm not vindictive. I'm not going to use my money to hurt your family or ruin your business. But I'm also not going to let you treat me like a problem that needs to be managed. Then, with a click, I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made of Tristan's phone call with his mother. Well, if you can't afford a proper ring, maybe you should reconsider. A woman expects certain standards. Victoria's face went utterly white. I have 3 years of messages, calls, and comments, I continued, my voice steady and unwavering. Every time you suggested I wasn't good enough. Every time you mentioned how Tristan should find someone from a proper family. Every family dinner where you sat me at the children's table even though I was 27 years old. That's legal, I finished, putting my phone away. And I'm not threatening you with it. I'm just making sure you understand that I see you clearly now. All of you. Bernard ushered his wife and son toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back, a sad, knowing look in his eyes. For what it's worth, Evelyn would have liked you even more after this conversation. She never suffered fools, and she never let anyone diminish her. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, the one bedroom with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played drums at 2 a.m. I could afford to move tomorrow, buy a penthouse, never work another shift in my life. But Grandma's letter echoed in my mind. Don't let it change who you are. I called Patricia, my account manager. I need to set up some things, I told her. Scholarships for nursing students, a fund for families who can't afford medical care, an investment in affordable housing. Of course, she said, without missing a beat. How much are we allocating? Half, I said, a sense of rightness settling over me. Half of everything. I want to live comfortably, but I want to remember where I came from. Your grandmother would approve, Patricia said softly. She did something similar. I know, I replied, a small smile finally gracing my lips. That's why I'm still living in this apartment. At least for now. That night, I put the $85,000 ring in a safety deposit box. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because someday I wanted to show it to my daughter or niece and tell her this story. Tell her that knowing your worth means never letting anyone make you feel worthless. No matter how many zeros are in your bank account. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Bernard. Tristan has been cut off. He needs to learn the value of earning his own way. If you're amenable, I'd like to take you to lunch. Not as his father, but as your grandmother's old friend. I have stories about her I think you'd like to hear. I agreed. We met at a diner, not one of his usual 5-star restaurants. He ordered coffee and pie. Evelyn and I met in 1978. He began, a nostalgic smile touching his lips. She'd just started her company. I was a junior analyst at an investment firm. She came in to pitch her technology, and every partner in the room dismissed her. Told her to get her husband to present it instead. He chuckled, a genuine, warm sound. What did she do? She walked out, went to our competitor, and made them billionaires. He paused. I quit the next day and begged her to let me manage her money. She said yes, but only if I promised to never mistake quiet for a week. She sounds incredible. She was terrifying and wonderful. She once fired an entire board of directors because they suggested she retire and let the men run things. This was 1985. She replaced them all with women and minorities, and the company's value doubled in 2 years. I smiled, imagining it, a surge of pride running through me. When she got sick, Bernard continued, his voice softening. She made me promise something. She said, my granddaughter is going to inherit a fortune, but I want her to inherit something more important first. I want her to inherit herself. That's why the restrictions on the trust. Exactly, I murmured, finally understanding the depth of my grandmother's love. She was afraid you'd be swallowed up by wealth before you knew who you were. She wanted you to struggle a little, to build your own identity, to know your own strength. Did she think I'd marry someone like Tristan? I asked, the old pain surfacing briefly. Bernard sighed. She hoped he wouldn't, but she knew it was possible. That's why she set up the test. If Tristan had proposed knowing you were poor, had committed to you without knowing about the money, she would have approved the marriage and released the funds immediately. She believed someone who loved you at your perceived worst would cherish you at your best. But Tristan couldn't do it. He paused, his gaze distant. My son, Bernard said slowly, has been given everything his entire life. He doesn't know how to value things he has to work for. I enabled that. His mother enabled that. And now he's learning a very expensive lesson. You really cut him off completely? He has his salary from the company, nothing more. No trust fund, no credit cards, no safety net. He's living in a studio apartment and taking the subway to work. How's he handling it? Bernard's expression was pained. Not well. But sometimes the kindest thing a parent can do is let their child struggle. I should have done it years ago. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about Grandma's adventures, her failed relationships before Grandpa, her fears about leaving me so much money. He showed me pictures I'd never seen, her at 25, fierce and determined, her at 60, softer, but still commanding. She wanted you to know something else, Bernard said as we were leaving. The money is yours to do with as you please. But she hoped you'd use it to build something like she did. Not just for yourself, but for others who need a chance. I'm already working on it, I said, a quiet determination in my voice. Scholarships, medical funds, housing investments. His eyes welled up. She knew you would. 3 months later, I was at the hospital when a patient came in with a young daughter. The woman had insurance, but not enough to cover the specialist her daughter desperately needed. I overheard the social worker explaining their limited options, the despair in the mother's eyes. I followed the social worker to her office. The family in room 412, I said. What would full coverage cost? She looked surprised. Are you family? No, I said, a warmth spreading through my chest. I'm someone who can help. I wrote a check. Then I wrote another for the family in 408 whose son needed surgery, and another for the elderly man in 315 who couldn't afford his medications. By the end of my shift, I'd given away $200,000. It felt better than any shopping spree possibly could have. That night, my former roommate, Riley, called. Girl, did you win the lottery? She shrieked. Someone just paid off all our student loans. I smiled. Anonymous donor, I said. This is insane. Do you know what this means? I can actually save for a house. I can take that job I wanted that pays less, but makes me happy. I can. She started crying, overwhelmed. I can breathe. You deserve it, I said, my heart full. You worked so hard for that degree. We all did, she sniffed. But seriously, if you find out who did this, I need to thank them. I never told her it was me. That wasn't why I did it. 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Tristan at a coffee shop. He looked different, tired. His expensive watch was gone. His clothes were off the rack. Hey, he said awkwardly. Hey, can we talk? We sat down. He had regular coffee, not his usual complicated order. I've been thinking a lot, he began, looking down at his cup. About what you said. About how I measured your worth in dollars. I waited, my expression neutral. You were right. I was raised to think value came from price tags and family names. I thought love was supposed to look a certain way, cost a certain amount. I never learned to value things I couldn't quantify. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious. Dad cut me off, he admitted, a wry smile playing on his lips. I'm living on $3,800 a month. Do you know how hard that is? I almost laughed, a bitter, ironic sound. Yes, Tristan, I do. That's more than I lived on for years. He had the decency to look embarrassed. Right. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm learning things I should have known years ago, like how to budget, how to cook, how to take the subway without looking terrified. Those are good skills, I acknowledged. I'm also learning that I took you for granted. You worked so hard, and I never appreciated it. I thought I was being noble by not caring that you didn't have money, but really, I was being condescending, like I was doing you a favor by being with you. Yeah, I said quietly. You were. I know it's too late, he continued, his voice heavy with regret. I know I burned that bridge, but I wanted you to know that losing you taught me more than my father cutting me off. Money I can earn back. But you were irreplaceable. And I didn't see it until you were gone. Thank you for saying that. Are you seeing anyone? He asked. No, I admitted. I've been busy. Busy how? I smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. Living boldly. Loving fiercely. Making my grandmother proud. He nodded slowly. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was, I confirmed. She left me more than money. She left me a roadmap for how to be strong. We talked for a while longer. It was almost friendly, a new kind of peace between us. When we parted, he hugged me. I hope you find someone worthy of you, he said. I hope you find yourself, I replied. A year passed. I'd thrown myself into my work, both at the hospital and with my foundation. We'd funded 200 scholarships, covered medical expenses for 89 families, and built affordable housing units for 150 people. I still lived in my apartment, still drove my old car, still worked my shifts. But I also traveled. I'd always wanted to see Thailand, so I went, then Morocco, then Iceland, not staying in luxury hotels, but in hostels and local guest houses, meeting people who reminded me why Grandma wanted me to know myself first. In Iceland, amidst the otherworldly landscapes, I met Henrik. He was a teacher from Norway, traveling on summer break. We bonded over cheap wine and shared stories about our worst students. What do? He asked on our third night. I'm a nurse, I said. And I run a foundation that helps families with medical and educational expenses. That's beautiful work, he said, his eyes warm. What about you? I teach literature to teenagers who would rather be anywhere else. Some days I'm convinced I'm wasting my life. Other days, a student tells me a book I recommended changed their perspective, and I remember why I do it. We spent 2 weeks together, a whirlwind of conversation and laughter. When it was time to go home, he kissed me goodbye at the airport. If you're ever in Norway, he said. If you're ever in New York, I replied. 3 months later, he showed up at my apartment with a backpack and a nervous smile. I took a sabbatical, he said, that endearing slight accent coloring his words. Thought I'd spend it in New York. If that's okay. It was more than okay. Henrik didn't know about my money. He knew I worked at a hospital and ran a small foundation. When I told him I needed to work weekends, he never complained. When I said I couldn't afford expensive restaurants, he cooked for us instead. One night, 6 months into our relationship, my accountant called with an urgent matter. I took it in the bedroom, but Henrik heard me mention dollar amounts that didn't quite match a nurse's salary. When I came out, he was quiet, just watching me. I need to tell you something, I said, my heart in my throat. He waited. I told him everything. About Grandma, the trust fund, Tristan, all of it. He listened without interrupting, his gaze kind and steady. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Why didn't you tell me before? He finally asked, his voice gentle. Because I needed to know you loved me, not my bank account. I fell in love with a nurse who works double shifts and still finds time to help strangers, he said, a soft smile spreading across his face. That's who you are. The money is just. He waved his hand dismissively. Details, I finished for him, a tear escaping my eye. Important details, he corrected. Not to me. I don't need a wealthy girlfriend. I need you. He smiled. Though I'm curious why you're still in this apartment with a leaky sink. Because my grandmother taught me not to let money change who I am. Smart woman, he said, pulling me into a hug. But even smart women deserve working plumbing. We moved in together shortly after. Not to a penthouse, but to a nice 2-bedroom in a neighborhood we both loved. Henrik met Bernard, who immediately approved. He looks at you the way your grandfather looked at Evelyn, Bernard said after dinner. Like you're the most fascinating person in the world. 18 months after our first meeting in Iceland, Henrik proposed. The ring was simple silver with a small sapphire. It's not much, he said nervously. Teacher salary doesn't leave room for. It's perfect, I interrupted, my heart soaring. It's exactly what I'm worth. He looked confused. I pulled out the box with the $85,000 ring I'd bought myself years ago. This, I said, holding up the extravagant diamond, is what I thought I needed to prove my value. But this, I held up his simple silver ring, this is given with love. That's what makes it priceless. We got married in a small ceremony. Bernard walked me down the aisle. Riley was my maid of honor. Henrik's family flew in from Norway. Tristan sent a card. Inside was a simple note, * congratulations. I'm happy you found what I couldn't give you, * there was no signature, but I recognized his handwriting. Bernard pulled me aside during the reception. Your grandmother would have loved this day. Simple, authentic, full of real joy. I wish she could be here, I said, a pang of longing in my chest. She is, he said, pointing to my heart. Every choice you've made, every person you've helped, every time you've stayed true to yourself, that's her living through you. After the wedding, Henrik and I took over management of the foundation together. He brought his teaching expertise, helping us develop educational programs. I brought my medical background for the healthcare initiatives. We still worked our regular jobs. I remained a nurse, taking shifts when I could. Henrik taught at a public school in the Bronx. The money sat mostly untouched, except for the foundation's work and our modest, comfortable living. 3 years into our marriage, I got pregnant. When our daughter was born, we named her Evelyn. The day we brought her home, I found a letter in our mailbox. It was from Bernard. Your grandmother left one final instruction, the note read, to be delivered when you had a child. She said, timing was everything. Inside was a small key and a note in Grandma's familiar handwriting. * my dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, you've built a life. You've loved and been loved. You've created something beyond wealth. You've created meaning. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National. Inside, you'll find letters I wrote to your daughter, one for each year until she turns 28. Give them to her when you think she's ready. Teach her what I taught you. Worth is not measured in dollars. Strength is not given, it's built. And the greatest inheritance we can leave is the courage to be fully ourselves. Love her fiercely. Live boldly. And never, ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. All my love across time, Grandma, *. I held baby Evelyn close, tears streaming down my face. Henrik read the letter over my shoulder. She really thought of everything. She wanted to make sure the lessons continued, I whispered. They will, he promised, his voice thick with emotion. We'll make sure of it. 5 years later, little Evelyn was starting kindergarten. We lived in a modest house in Queens, chosen for its good school district and diverse neighborhood. Henrik had been promoted to principal. I'd become head of emergency nursing at my hospital. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped thousands of families, funded hundreds of scholarships, built affordable housing in 3 states. One morning, I was dropping Evelyn off at school when I saw a familiar face in the pickup line. Tristan. He was older, lines around his eyes, but he looked peaceful. Next to him was a woman I didn't recognize and a little boy about Evelyn's age. Our eyes met. He gave a small wave. I waved back. After drop-off, he approached me in the parking lot. This is weird, he said, laughing nervously. Yeah, is that your daughter? She's beautiful. Thank you. That's your son? Oliver. Yeah, he's my whole world. What brings you to this neighborhood? I thought you'd moved to Manhattan. I did for a while, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. But Dad kept me cut off for 5 years. By the time he felt I'd learned my lesson, I'd gotten used to living simply. Turns out I like it better. This neighborhood felt like home. And the woman? My wife, Natasha. She's a high school teacher. We met at a parent-teacher conference for my nephew. She had no idea who my family was. Didn't care when she found out. Sounds familiar, I said, a genuine smile now. Yeah, well, you taught me what to look for. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. I'm glad you're happy, he said finally. I mean that. I'm glad you found your way, too. Dad talks about you sometimes, about the foundation, the work you're doing. He's really proud of you. Says you're exactly what your grandmother hoped you'd be. That means a lot. I wanted to say, he paused, choosing his words carefully, thank you for not destroying my family when you could have, for just walking away and building something better. I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it for me. Revenge would have been living in your mother's head rent-free forever. I chose to live in my own freedom instead. He nodded. That's exactly what Natasha would say. You two would probably get along. Maybe, I said. This neighborhood has a tendency to bring people together. Over the next year, our families became friendly. Not close, but friendly. The kids played together at the park. We'd wave at school events. Natasha and I discovered we both loved terrible reality TV and bonded over wine and discussions about The Bachelor. One evening, the four of us were having dinner, something that would have been unimaginable years ago. "Can I ask you something?" Natasha said suddenly, looking at me. "And please don't think I'm rude." "Go ahead." "Tristan told me what happened with you two. The money, the ring, all of it. But he also said you could have made his life hell, and you didn't." "Why?" I thought about it, looking at Henrik, then at Tristan. Because holding on to anger would have meant he still had power over me. Letting go meant I got to decide who I wanted to be. "That's incredibly mature," Natasha said, impressed. Trust me, I had some very immature moments first. I may have sent his mother a fruit basket with a note saying, "Thanks for raising a son who taught me what I deserve," before blocking her number. Tristan choked on his wine, sputtering. "You didn't." "I absolutely did." The note was in calligraphy. It cost $200. Natasha burst out laughing, a genuine, joyful sound. "Oh my God, I love it." "What did she do?" "Tried to call 93 times before realizing I'd blocked her. Bernard told me she ranted about it for weeks." "She still brings it up sometimes," Tristan admitted, wiping his mouth. "Usually when she's had too much champagne at family events." "Good," I said cheerfully. "Every time she eats a pear, I want her to think about the daughter-in-law who got away." We all laughed. It felt good, healing even. Henrik squeezed my hand under the table. "My wife, the fruit basket assassin." It was a very expensive fruit basket, I defended, feigning indignation. Imported cheeses, fancy crackers, those weird tiny jams. I wanted to make sure the message was classy. "The message was F you wrapped in cellophane," Tristan said, still chuckling. "The classiest F you she'll ever receive." I agreed. Later, as Henrik and I walked home, he asked, "Do you ever regret how it all happened? The pain with Tristan, the revelation about the money." "No," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "Because if it had happened differently, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have learned what I learned, and I probably wouldn't have met you. The universe works in mysterious ways." My grandmother would say, "The universe rewards those who know their worth." Smart woman. The smartest. When little Evelyn turned 7, I gave her the first letter from my grandmother. She read it slowly, her little brow furrowed in concentration. "Grandma Evelyn says I'm going to do great things," she announced, looking up at me, her eyes bright. "You are," I agreed, my heart swelling with love. "She says I should be brave and never let anyone make me small." Good advice. Did you follow her advice, Mommy? I thought about the scared girl who'd overheard a conversation about rings and worth. About the woman who'd bought her own ring to prove a point. About the choices I'd made since. "I tried my best," I said. "Sometimes I succeeded. Sometimes I failed, but I kept trying." Grandma Evelyn says that's what matters. The trying. She's right about that too. Evelyn carefully folded the letter and put it in her treasure box with her other important things. A smooth rock from the beach, a feather she'd found in the park, a photo of all of us on vacation. "Will I get more letters?" she asked. "One every year until you're 28. That's so long from now. It'll go faster than you think." That night, I pulled out my own letter from Grandma, the one that had started everything. I read it again, just like I did every year on the anniversary of accessing the trust. Live boldly. Love fiercely. And if anyone ever makes you feel small, remember you come from women who built empires. I'd built my empire, not of buildings or stock portfolios, though those existed, but of choices and values and relationships built on honesty. An empire of helping hands and second chances. An empire where worth was measured in impact, not income. The foundation had grown to a $400 million operation. We'd helped tens of thousands of families, created opportunities for people who'd been told they weren't worth investing in. Every scholarship recipient got a letter from me. Someone believed in me when I needed it most. Now, I'm passing that belief forward to you. Use this opportunity wisely, not because you owe me, but because you owe yourself the chance to become everything you can be. I'd gotten thousands of letters back over the years, thank you notes from students who'd graduated, from families who'd gotten through medical crises, from people who'd moved into our affordable housing and rebuilt their lives. Those letters filled an entire room in our house, my real treasure. Bernard was aging now, in his late 70s. He'd stepped down from running the company, passing it to a board of directors he'd carefully selected. We still had lunch once a month. "Your grandmother would be so proud," he said at our latest meeting. "Not just of the money you've given away, but of who you've become." I hope so. I know so. She told me once that the true test of character is what you do when no one is watching, and nothing is at stake except your own integrity. I think about that a lot. He paused, a gentle smile playing on his lips. She also said something else. She said, I'm giving my granddaughter money, but what I really want to give her is the wisdom to know it doesn't matter. That's a hard lesson, I admitted. The best ones are. He pulled out a small box. I have something for you from Evelyn. She left it with instructions to give it to you on your 35th birthday. I opened it. Inside was a simple gold locket. When I opened it, there was a picture of Grandma on one side and a picture of me as a baby on the other. She wore this every day, Bernard said, his voice soft. She wanted you to have it when you were old enough to understand what it meant to carry someone with you. I put it on. It felt right against my skin, like coming home. There's something else, Bernard continued, his voice dropping slightly. A last message she wanted me to tell you in person. He paused, collecting himself. She said, tell my granddaughter that knowing your worth doesn't mean shouting it from the rooftops. It means walking through the world with quiet confidence, helping others find their own worth along the way. That's the real inheritance. That's what builds empires that last. I wiped tears from my eyes. Thank you for carrying all these messages for so long. It was my honor. Your grandmother was the love of my life, though I never told her. I was married to someone else. Built a different life. But she was the one who taught me what real worth looked like. When she asked me to watch over you, to help you find your way, it was the greatest gift she could have given me. She loved you, too, I said, a lump in my throat. I can tell from the way she trusted you with all of this. He smiled sadly. Some loves aren't meant to be lived. They're meant to be honored. I honored her by helping you become who you were meant to be. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. What will you do now? He asked eventually. You've accomplished so much. What's next? I want to expand the foundation internationally. There are kids in developing countries who need the same chances I had. I want to build schools, fund medical clinics, create opportunities. Ambitious. Grandma would expect nothing less. No, she wouldn't. 2 years later, we opened our first international initiative in Ghana. A school and medical clinic combined, serving 500 children and their families. At the opening ceremony, I stood before a crowd of villagers, local officials, and foundation staff. My grandmother believed that every person has inherent worth, I said, my voice strong, carrying across the humid air. Not because of what they own or where they come from, but because they're human. She taught me that those of us with resources have a responsibility to help others access their potential. The children sang a song they'd learned for the occasion. Their voices carried across the red dirt, clear and hopeful. After the ceremony, a little girl approached me shyly. She couldn't have been more than 6. Are you the rich lady? She asked in accented English. I knelt down to her level. I'm just a lady who wants to help. My teacher says you're going to pay for my school forever. That's the plan. Why? It was such a simple question, such a profound one. Because someone helped me once, I said, touching her cheek. And now it's my turn to help you. Will I have to help someone when I'm big? Only if you want to. But I think you will, because once you know how good it feels to help someone, it's hard to stop. She smiled, a gap-toothed grin, and ran off to join her friends. Henrik came up beside me, slipping his hand into mine. 20 schools, he said, a twinkle in his eye. That's the goal now, isn't it? 25, I corrected, feeling an exhilarating sense of purpose. I'm feeling ambitious. Your grandmother created a monster, he teased. The best kind. That night in our hotel in Accra, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a business plan or a foundation proposal. A letter. Dear Evelyn, by the time you read this, you'll be 28, the same age I was when I first accessed your great-grandmother's trust fund. I wonder what kind of woman you'll be, what dreams you'll have, what struggles you'll have faced. I'm writing to tell you the same thing great-grandma Evelyn told me, know your worth. But let me add something she learned too late to tell me directly. Knowing your worth also means helping others discover theirs. The money I'm leaving you comes with no restrictions. You can access it whenever you need it. But I hope by the time you do, you'll already know what great-grandma wanted me to know. The money is just a tool. Who you are matters more than what you have. I've lived a beautiful life. I've loved deeply, worked hard, and helped where I could. I've made mistakes and learned from them. I've lost people and found new ones. And, through it all, I've tried to honor the woman who gave me more than money. She gave me a blueprint for living. Whatever you do with your inheritance, do it with intention. Do it with love. Do it with the knowledge that you come from a line of strong women who built empires, not of wealth, but of worth. Live boldly, love fiercely, and never let anyone tell you what you're worth. All my love, your mother. I saved it in a file marked for Evelyn, age 28. Someday she'd read it. Someday she'd make her own choices about what to do with the fortune she'd inherit. But for now, she was just a kid who loved horses and hated broccoli, who climbed trees and scraped her knees, who had her father's kind eyes and her great-grandmother's determination. Perfect, just as she was. 10 years passed. The foundation flourished. We built 31 schools across 8 countries, funded medical care for over 100,000 families, provided scholarships to 2,400 students. Little Evelyn was 17 now, applying to colleges. She wanted to study international development. "I want to work with your foundation," she announced one night at dinner. "After college, I want to help build schools like the ones in Ghana and Tanzania." "What about the trust fund?" I asked carefully. "You'll get access in 11 years. She shrugged. "That's just money. I want to earn my place. I want to know I'm doing this work because I chose it, not because I have to." Henrik and I exchanged glances. She'd absorbed the lessons without us having to preach them. "Great-Grandma Evelyn would like that answer," I said, a surge of profound pride washing over me. "I hope so. From her letters, she sounds like she'd be really tough to impress." She was, I confirmed, a knowing smile on my face. "And you would have impressed her." Bernard passed away the following spring. He was 82 and went peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, I learned things I'd never known. How he'd secretly funded scholarships for underprivileged students for 40 years. How he'd paid medical bills for families in need. How he'd used his wealth quietly, without fanfare or recognition. He learned from Evelyn, one of his old colleagues told me. After she died, he became a different person, more thoughtful, more generous. He said she taught him that money was boring unless you did something meaningful with it. Tristan spoke at the funeral. He was in his 50s now, still married to Natasha, with 3 kids. "My father taught me 2 great lessons," he said, his voice surprisingly humble. "The first was what not to do, how to be entitled and blind to others' worth. The second was how to fix it. When he cut me off, I thought he was being cruel. Now I know he was being kind. He was giving me the chance to rebuild myself into someone worth being." After the service, Victoria approached me. She was elderly now, her sharp edges softened by time. "I owe you an apology," she said stiffly, her gaze direct. "For how I treated you, for the things I said." "That was a long time ago," I replied, a surprising calm in my voice. "It was. But I've watched you build something remarkable. I've watched my son become a better man because you showed him what real worth looks like. And I've realized I spent my whole life measuring the wrong things. It's never too late to change what you measure." She smiled sadly. "Bernard used to say that. He said Evelyn taught him that lesson. She taught a lot of people. She taught you best of all." We stood together in the cemetery, 3 generations of complicated history between us. "The fruit basket," Victoria said suddenly, a faint spark in her eyes. "Excuse me, the fruit basket you sent me, with a note about raising a son who taught you what you deserve." "Oh, that," I said, a small laugh escaping me. I kept the note. It's in my desk drawer. Sometimes, when I'm tempted to judge someone for not meeting arbitrary standards, I read it. It reminds me what happens when you mistake price for value. I'm glad it helped. It did more than help. It changed me. Just took me a decade to admit it. She walked away slowly, leaning on her cane. Tristan came up beside me. "Did my mother just apologize to you?" he whispered, a hint of shock in his voice. "In her way. Miracles do happen. Sometimes the slowest changes are the most lasting ones." "Is that Grandma Evelyn wisdom?" "No, that's therapist wisdom. I've been in therapy for 15 years. Best investment I ever made." He laughed, a genuine, booming laugh that warmed the quiet cemetery. "Better than the $85,000 ring?" "Way better. That ring is sitting in a safety deposit box. My mental health I use every day. Whatever happened to that ring anyway? I'm saving it for Evelyn. When she's old enough to understand the story, I'll give it to her. Not as a prize, but as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That the most valuable things can't be bought. They have to be earned through knowing yourself first." The Foundation's 20th anniversary gala was approaching. We'd planned a major announcement, a new initiative to fund women's education globally with a $500 million commitment. The night of the gala, I wore Grandma's locket, a simple black dress, no designer labels. Henrik wore a suit he'd owned for 10 years. We could upgrade our wardrobes, he joked, as we entered the grand ballroom. "We can definitely afford it." "Why?" I challenged playfully. "These clothes work fine. Because every other person here will be in clothes that cost more than our car. Let them. We'll be the ones who know the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy." The ballroom was filled with donors, foundation staff, scholarship recipients, and families we'd helped. The diversity of the crowd always made me proud. I spotted Evelyn across the room, at 17, talking animatedly with a group of scholarship students, confident and kind, asking them about their studies, their dreams. A young woman approached the microphone. She was one of our first scholarship recipients, now a doctor. 15 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong. I was accepted to medical school, but couldn't afford to go. My family had nothing. I thought my dream was over. Then I got a letter from this foundation. It said, someone believed in me when I needed it most. Now, I'm passing that belief forward to you. Her voice broke slightly, filled with emotion. That letter changed my life. Not just because it came with money, but because it came with belief. Someone I'd never met believed I was worth investing in. Today, I'm the head of emergency medicine at Mount Sinai. I've treated thousands of patients, and every single one of them benefited from the belief someone showed in me 15 years ago. The room erupted in applause. She continued, the woman who started this foundation teaches us that worth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in impact, in lives changed, in opportunities created. And tonight, we're announcing a commitment to change 50,000 more lives over the next decade. More applause, thunderous this time. I stood and walked to the stage, my heart overflowing. My grandmother left me a fortune, I said to the crowd. But more importantly, she left me a question. What will you do with what you've been given? Tonight, I can answer her. I've tried to multiply what she gave me. Not just the money, but the wisdom. Every person here represents that multiplication. Every scholarship, every medical bill paid, every school built. It's her legacy multiplying across the world. I pulled out a photo of Grandma and held it up. She never got to see this, but I think she knew it would happen. She believed in investing in potential, not just proven results. She believed everyone deserved a chance to become who they were meant to be. After the speeches, Evelyn found me, her eyes shining. Mom, that was beautiful. Thank you, sweetie. I've been thinking about great-grandma's letters, about what she wanted me to learn. And I think I get it now. She wanted me to know that I'm enough. That I don't need money to prove my worth. That the real inheritance is knowing who I am. I hugged her tight, tears blurring my vision. She'd be so proud of you. I hope so. I'm trying to make her proud. Make you proud. You already do, I whispered, every single day. Later, when most guests had left, Henrik and I stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Do you ever think about what your life would be like if you'd never overheard that conversation? He asked, his arm around me. Sometimes. But then I remember that conversation didn't change my life. It revealed it. The truth was always there. I just needed to hear it to understand what I needed to do. No regrets? Not one. Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish Grandma could have met you and Evelyn. I wish she could see what her inheritance built. I think she knows, Henrik said, squeezing my hand. Somehow, somewhere, she knows. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Make a wish, he said. I closed my eyes. But I didn't wish for anything. I had everything I needed. Instead, I said a silent thank you to Grandma, to Bernard, to every person who'd helped me understand that worth wasn't measured in carrots or bank accounts, but in choices and character. When I opened my eyes, Henrik was watching me with that expression he got sometimes, like I was the most fascinating person in the world. What? I asked, a blush rising to my cheeks. Just thinking how lucky I am. Because I have money? Because you don't care that you have money. Because you're still the woman who worked double shifts and helped strangers. The money just gave you more ways to be who you already were. Grandma planned that. Smart woman. The smartest. We went inside where Evelyn was helping the staff clean up. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. My phone buzzed. A message from the foundation's director in Kenya. School number 31 just opened. 600 kids enrolled. They sang a song about knowing their worth. Thought you'd want to know. I showed Henrik and Evelyn. 31 schools. Evelyn breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. That's incredible. 31 so far, I corrected, a quiet fire in my belly. We're not done yet. Will we ever be done? Henrik asked, a loving smile on his face. I hope not. The work of helping people know their worth? That's never finished. That night, alone in our bedroom, I pulled out the safety deposit box key, the one for the ring I'd bought myself all those years ago. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd give it to Evelyn with the full story. Not as a symbol of what I'd lost, but as a reminder of what I'd gained. The ability to know my worth without needing anyone else to validate it. The strength to walk away from people who diminished me. The wisdom to build something meaningful with what I'd been given. And most importantly, the knowledge that the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to become fully yourself. I fell asleep wearing Grandma's locket, dreaming of all the lives we'd touch tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to come. Because that's what it meant to truly know your worth. Not in how much you had, but in how much you gave away. Not in what you could buy, but in what you could build. Not in the ring someone could afford to buy you, but in the life you chose to live. And in that quiet understanding, I finally knew what Grandma had known all along. The real fortune wasn't in the bank account. It was in knowing I didn't need it to be enough.